George, first of all, thanks very much for agreeing to do this. I know the guys are very appreciative. Before I start, you've got to be very proud of the performance on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously we got another red card, which is nothing malicious, but it's just the context of where the game is at the moment. So that doesn't help. But I think the character of the boys that I keep referencing the last month or so just shows through, and I think I'm really proud of the way they solved the problems and worked really hard for 50 odd minutes. A man down to come away with a victory. I think probably the most pleasing thing for me is the way they come in on a Monday, and it's obviously happier when you win, but they're straight away stripping down what we could have done better, where we missed out, where we let Wasp back in, and they were actually disappointed with the 10-minute spell that let in 2 tries, and that's been addressed today. And I think that's a real growth for this group. It's not about it's obviously enjoy the moment and the victory, but it's about actually we could have done better and we want to get better, and I'm really happy with the way the boys are approaching things.
Great. And sometimes when players after a red card go to disciplinaries, they just accept, like Val accepted it the other week. Will you be accepting Ollie's, or will you put up a defence? Because he got that shove, didn't he?
Yeah, he did get a shove. I think in the context of that, we'll probably raise that. We've been working through bits and pieces today, so we need to finalise exactly what we're going to do tomorrow. But I think, in the context that Ollie's tackled a lot of blokes in that fashion, and he's been really good at slowing his feet and picking someone up and driving them back. I think that push just caught him off balance a little bit, and he just wobbled a bit forward and didn't have a chance to regroup himself. So, he's got an immaculate record. He's an outstanding individual, Ollie, and a thoroughly nice bloke. He's not a malicious. He plays hard, but he's not malicious at all. So, I think within the context of that, you'd hope that would be taken into account. But yeah, we're just putting together our case for that. We'll finish that.
Let me take you back to when you joined Gloucester. Interviewing Lance Bradley, he said that when you came to the interview, you'd done an analysis of how you saw Gloucester's problems over the years. Do you think you could share some of that with us? Yeah,
I mean, I suppose pre-COVID, we'd had one of the last games I had London Irish was Gloucester, and so I'd done a lot of work on where we thought we could beat Gloucester, and I think the work I'd done there, we put it into fruition and won that game. So that was a starting point for me. And then I obviously, when the opportunity became more serious, I started watching games back, and I'd obviously been competing with Gloucester for a number of years anyway. But all the games I watched back and went right back, I think, it's been a long time since Gloucester had a set piece that, would really compete at the top level. I think it's probably just been a source of ball rather than a source of pressure. I think that was my starting point. That's the sort of the area that I looked at first and said, this is wouldn't take a huge amount to get this more productive, and with a lot of hard graft. I think there's some good characters to really hammer that home. The defence wasn't in a bad spot, but I felt it was just containing the attack. I don't think it was being used as an aggressive weapon. And also the biggest thing probably overall was just the amount of energy Gloucester was using playing in different areas of the field and almost chancing your arm all the time. And you're asking, particularly the forwards, you're asking them to do a huge amount of work. And then when you end up in the right areas of the pitch where you want to maul, get on top, or, Exeter, the Masters are doing it currently, when you get in the right positions to take the points away, you've got to have some energy. So you can't certainly ask forwards to give everything all over the park, be running great lines, and then get down the other end and provide, some points. So I think using the energy would probably be the best way I could describe that. I feel Gloucester were trying to use it everywhere and just spreading themselves thin.
Okay. Over the years, Gloucester have been very inconsistent. A good win has typically been followed by a very bad loss and so on. Is there a cultural aspect to that? Because over the years, we've underperformed, bearing in mind the talent that's always been in the squad. Yeah,
it's obviously very hard for me to comment on what's gone before. But that's certainly the perspective that I would have had being at other clubs looking in. I think in recent years the team would have been reliant on a couple of players, and when those players are fit and on form, that's fine. But I think to have a really competitive squad, you've got to use the squad, and you've got to train the squad, and you've got to back people to step in and play certain games, and you can't sort of cross your fingers and hope that everyone's going to be fit for a whole season and also be on form for a whole season. And I think the guys who are lucky enough to start need to know they need to deliver a performance, because the guy behind is chomping at the bit to go, and the coach will back him if you don't deliver what's being asked of you. So I think there's probably been an element of that. And I also think, talking about culture is a very easy thing to do, and everyone has their different philosophies, and, you do this, you do that. Living it and actually trying to create a top-class environment is very different, because you don't just have to live it in the club, you have to live it away from the club, you have to push each other. It can be uncomfortable, and that's something that the leadership, the lads in those leadership positions have to drive, and the coaches have to drive, but in the end it has to be the players. But it is uncomfortable. It can't always be nice. You want a rugby club to be a great place to come and work, but if it's too nice and no one really says anything or calls anybody out, then you can't create a competitive culture. And that's something I'm strong on. I think you have to be honest. I think you have to be able to sometimes call your best mate out sitting next to you and say, like, mate, you need to train a bit harder, or you need to stop messing around. Like, let's have some fun, but this is serious work time now. And that's something that tried to sort of reinforce as much as possible. And there's been some senior players really embrace that and really enjoy that perspective on it. And we've got some young guys coming through and who are really on board with that now. And I think that's something that, as you say, when I met with Lance and Brownie through this process of coming to the club, that's something that they'd already started installing in terms of all the staff around the club. And I see it as an all-in approach. And I think, as I say, Lance and Brown are installing that in different departments as well, that, this is one club and there are certain standards that we want to adhere to. And that if we all work hard and hold each other accountable, it will be fun and we'll be successful. But there are going to be uncomfortable moments, and that's the nature of the beast, and that's competitive sport, and that's, if we want to be a competitive club all round, we have to be able to call each other out and be okay with getting called out.
Okay. How did you assemble your coaching team? Obviously, there's a really strong Wasps connection with you, Dom, Alex, and Trevor as well for a while.
Yeah, well, I think, I obviously knew all those guys previously, and, Trev had coached me at Wasps. I'd obviously come through with Alex King and Don Waldock. Sort of, we all crossed over at different stages. And I think trust is the biggest thing for me. If this job is tough and it is, again, it's enjoyable, but it has really good moments and really hard moments. And I knew if we were going to do this properly, there was going to be a lot of hard moments, especially early on. That wasn't something I ever sort of danced around. So I knew that I needed quality people. I needed trustworthy people who were going to all buy into the same thing and work really hard at it. And obviously you've got to have a good skill set. And, I think probably the bit in that, I didn't know Tim Taylor, and he's been outstanding. He's been awesome. He lives and breathes the job. He works unbelievably hard. He's a great bloke. And that was probably my curveball, if you like, in the coaching team was, wanted a bit of continuity. I obviously did my homework on Tim and got rave reviews as a bloke, but as a coach, he's been awesome. And that goes for all the staff here. There's a really good group assembled here that I can't take credit for, because they were mostly here before I got here. And so it really is a quality group, and we've got, top people in all these positions. And I think now we've got one of the most exciting coaching groups, in the Premiership. And like I say, it's a group who really gets along well, but also, we have plenty of ding-dongs when we shut that coaching room door. And so far we've all come out on the same page, but it's not as simple as that where we start.
You refer a lot, you did it in press conferences at the when you arrived, about the playing style that you're cultivating. Could you just try and describe the Skivington playing style?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the Skivington playing style. I'd say, obviously, I obviously enjoy set piece. That I think that's a given in the Premiership. I think, your defence sets the tone for a team. I think if you have to have a ferocious defence in this league, if you don't and you're sort of containing teams, I don't think you can really get to the top. But I think the big one for me is where we use our energy. Like I say, I think it's how you work your way up the field. It's not, it's not throwing caution into the wind every time just to try and pull off a master play. It's about being smart. There's teams you play where you can have a crack from deep, but then there's teams where you play where you can't. So you have to kick the ball, and you have to accept that if you catch someone from deep, then there's a good chance they're going to change what they're doing the next time to catch you out. So you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over. So I wouldn't like to pin my way of playing down because there's so many facets to it. But in the end, you need a strong set piece, you need a strong defence, and we're obviously still playing attacking rugby, which is great. We've obviously it's shifted slightly with different personnel. You can't just play one way all the time, but the energy thing is the big thing for me. I think you have to use that correctly. You have to make your way up the field, and you have to have a plan about that. You can't just rely on having great skills and trying to hope the same thing will work all over the park. So, that's I wouldn't have an exact analogy in a nutshell, but I think it's developing nicely. I think there's also an element of we're really getting to know the players now. I think the players really understand the coaching team, and I think the coaching team really understand the players. And probably the position we're getting to now is we've sort of given a lot of information and tested the lads in a lot of different ways, and now the players are sort of owning it themselves. So, the players know they can challenge us, and they regularly do, and we sort of find our way together, which is ultimately, if I came in and said we're going to play this way, that's it, end of. Well, the boys would do it because it's their jobs to do it. But in the end, they wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't get the best out of them. So I think we're still finding our way on a few bits and pieces, but I think we've made some huge strides in the key fundamentals of the game that we targeted.
And in terms of the defence, I mean, very different from the way it's been before. And early on, there were a few people jumping out of the line and some mistakes. But the defence in the last few games has really tightened up, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, the defence wasn't horrendous, but, Dom's got a very clear, strong philosophy on how we're going to defend. And we all back that. And there's a lot of energy in that. And it's a hard work system. You've got to work really hard to defend the way we defend. And again, it was always going to come with some pain early on because we're asking the lads to be a lot more aggressive than they've been previously. So within that, not dissimilar, to the attack or set piece, within that, there's always going to be a learning period. And I'm not saying we're completely there yet now, because we're not. We have had a few good weeks, but we've still got a long way to go, which is the exciting part. But yeah, I mean, we're always going to get caught out, and that's something we addressed as a coaching team and said, what are we here to do? And we're here to build this team and club to be a properly successful team, and we believe the systems we're using will do that. But you've got to attack it, and you've got to have a go, and you've got to be bold. And the players work extremely hard on it. And again, we're at a stage now where the players are the first ones to come in and go, I blew my role, I know what I did wrong, and yes, it's starting to gain a little bit of traction now, which is great.
How much effort goes in training to tackling lower, bearing in mind everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we have sessions around training all the time. So the boys do their weights, and then Dom has them. We call it the dojo. He has a room here where he takes very small groups, and we work tackle technique, breakdown technique. Tim does it with skills. There's always little workshops. There's actually very few moments in the working day for the players that they're sat around not doing something. So if we can't be outside doing the high level stuff, which obviously there's a limit on what you can do, we're working technique in different areas, you know, on a low level basis in the gym or in the dojo or discussions on the computer. But there's a huge amount of work goes into it. I think there's a long way to go. I think this sticky transition period where, you know, obviously the player protection comes first. The grey area of instances like Thorlo on the weekend are tough. But again, we've had another meeting addressing it today where we said, look, this is the way the game's going. It doesn't really matter what our opinion on it is. It doesn't really matter in the end. It's the powers that be are going to dictate it. So we have to adapt even more. But we do a huge amount of work on it, and we'll continue to do a huge amount of work on it until there's no more cards.
And how often do you bring refs in to help in training?
We had a lot of refs in pre-season. We had a friendly game with Hartbury on Friday with the lads who haven't had as much rugby, and brought proper officials in there. We get Tony Spreadbury to send some guys over. And we've had them in for various, you know, early on we had them in for some breakdown sessions. If we feel there's an area that we would like to have a live session and let it run and not have our voices in there, we've had refs in. But, you know, they don't come in every week. They wouldn't come in every week, even if you ask them. They're all good people, but there comes a point. But yeah, we have them in and out periodically, just depending on, you know, if we were going to have a little live game amongst ourselves or a live unit session or something, you know, really tasty, if you like, we'd get some officials in so that it's not, you know, it's not us refereeing it.
Can I move on to young players? Because over the years, that's an area where fans really have got disgruntled. You know, they look at Wasps and they see Dan Robson, they look down at Bristol and they see great Gloucester lads off doing the business somewhere else. And I got the feeling, talking to Lance and with this new academy director, that there's been a change here. There's much more focus on homegrown talent. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think, you know, you look around the league and there is way too many really good, talented Gloucester rugby players, you know, out at other clubs. And me and Brownie are doing the recruitment stuff, and we quite often, I'll say, do you know what, that guy would be perfect for our squad right now. And then Brownie will say, he was actually in our academy. And I was like, I didn't know that. And it, you know, you wonder what's happened. But, you know, not everyone's going to have a different take on what sort of players they want. So sometimes people slip through the net. I think way too many people have slipped through the net here previously. That's a fact. I don't think anyone would deny that. And that's something we want to make sure doesn't happen again. And, you know, going forward right now, we've got a really good group of young lads. We're getting them exposed at the right sort of measures, I think, you know, and I'm very keen for these lads to come through and play. And obviously, you know, we've been drip feeding George Barton in, and we've been doing a huge amount of work with George behind the scenes. And we felt like this game was the right one to play him in, and he did a great job. So it's, you know, and there's other guys, Al Seville, you know, now starting in the Premiership. There's some good examples of people coming through, and that's the way we want to push it.
Lance made a comment about a policy of trying to reduce the average age of the squad. Is that something that you're consciously working on? Yeah,
again, this is sort of the discussions myself, Brownie and Lance have had just about just the makeup of the squad. And you need a balance, you know, like we say, we want these young guys really coming through out on the field, pushing people and pushing for places. Like, we want it to be properly competitive. You also need that bracket of older, experienced guys who've been around the block and, you know, had some success and some failure, and, you know, to make sure there's a good balance. But yeah, I mean, that core group in the middle, you know, where they're, I suppose, got a bit of experience and a decent amount of experience, but also, you know, really trying to prove a point and make a name for themselves, and also, you know, they can be together for a good long while. So it's like the young Gloucester lads coming through. We want that team to build and grow and become the first team in a number of years' time, and they'll have been together a good long while, and they're all fighting for the same reason. And that's the same as getting a core group in the middle with the right amount of experience, you know, still got massive things to prove, and, you know, want to compete and want to play for Gloucester for the right reason, to go and get some trophies. That's excellent to hear. When people have asked you and tried to push you on the suspension of relegation, you've quite rightly said, it doesn't matter, we're on a path, and that's where we're going. Chris Boyd in Northampton said to me a few weeks ago,
that he thought suspending relegation would improve the quality of the, as he put it, the footy that was being played. And since the moratorium came in, it seems to me that we're getting much more attractive rugby being played. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, games like Quinn Saints yesterday that was, helter-skelter and end-to-end stuff, and that's great. I genuinely don't think it changed anything for us. I don't think we certainly haven't changed the way we're playing rugby. That we've been playing sort of this way. We probably, from London Irish, I felt we made a shift in our attack, and we've been building nicely. But I mean, my view on relegation is that competitive people or rugby players are competitive by nature. And once you put a shirt on and you're out training every day, or you're in the gym, or you get on a rugby pitch, you're going to go hard, no matter whether you're bottom of the league, top of the league, middle of the table. And if you build a group that really want to succeed, they're going to be extremely competitive, whether it's the last game of the season, there's nothing to play for, or whether it's the last game of the season and you've got everything to play for. I don't believe in a mindset of one game is, we've got nothing. You've always got something to play for, because you're always going out representing your club, yourself, your family, your supporters. There's no day you take to the field, and just go, oh well, whatever happens. And that's something. If I ever smelt that with anyone, they definitely wouldn't be playing for the club.
Fantastic. Can I move on to recruitment? And I know you're not going to mention specific names, but have you and Alex identified areas where you want to recruit for next season, and is it underway?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, as you say, I can't really divulge anything, but we wanted to get a few more numbers in the pack, and we're in a good process and good conversations. There's a couple of obviously a few coming in anyway.
Yeah.
With Adam and Davidson and people like that. Obviously Singo re-signed, and Henry Walker signed the contract. So we've got some good retention going on, and yeah, there will be more people coming in for sure. But as and when those get signed and released, but certainly some more numbers up front was an area we targeted.
What part does character play in your recruitment? Finding somebody who's a good bloke and is going to fit in.
Well, it's absolutely top of the list, because the recruitment process is something that we've got a very strict process in place now, and again, this is something we've discussed at all levels. From board level, all the way trickling down the club, is how we bring people in and what sort of people we're going to bring in. So, obviously, there's some names out there, and you watch them play and you go, they're great, and all the rest of it, but it doesn't mean they're the right people to come in. And so I suppose the process we go through is we've all got certain areas, and there's a first point of contact. For instance, if we're looking at props, Trev needs the can they scrummage? Can they do the job? Can they do it the way we're going to do it? Yes, they can. Okay, great. Then we all go through, can they carry, tackle? Once we're happy with the game, that they can tick the boxes game-wise, and we think they could come in and add to the environment, well, then we start doing reference checks on people, and we dig around, who do we know, who knows them, who's worked with them. And, in this game, you don't ever have to look too far, but we like to get 3 or 4 references on people. And then once we've, qualified they're a good bloke who's going to work hard, then we start talking to them. But, we've had plenty of times we've done the references. No, listen, he's all about himself, or, he was great for a couple of months, and then the true side, and then that's it. That's the end of the road for them, because you can't carry people who are doing this for the wrong reason. You can't, especially the way the salary cap's going now. If you commit to someone, you need to know that they're in. But even before that, just as a good team, you have to have good team people, and you need quality, and you obviously need a certain standard of skill set to play. And there's some areas we know we need, really high skill sets, and other areas, you need blokes who can just roll up their sleeves and tough it out. But that is top of the list. You're not coming here unless your references are good, and we know you're a good bloke.
We've got players who've arrived this year on short-term contracts. Santi Carreras and Santi Sacchino. Is it likely they'll extend beyond this season?
Yeah, again, there's conversations going on. I think our Argentinian contingent have been outstanding for us, actually, and I think they've really added to the environment. I think the boys love them and they love the boys, and again, those three lads are here for the right reasons, and that is top of the list, like we're saying. So they tick a lot of boxes for us. I'm sure Brownie's working away, and we'll see where that lands.
Okay, and in terms of managing the squad, how hard is it to manage the game time of really talented players? I mean, the obvious place is, Gloucester are blessed with amazing strength in wingers. Does that set you challenges trying to manage their expectations and their game time?
Yeah, it will set us challenges when we've got them all in the building together. We haven't been in that position, really. We had it one or two games when we first came in, but that was obviously very early days, and there was so many games, thick and fast, that everyone could have game time. Hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll have everybody lined up, and then we'll have to make some tough decisions. But I think we're very Dan Tobin runs a very strict ship on minutes played, the GPS data, all the rest of it. We are hammered with information, so we're very aware of how much rugby people have played, how many collisions they've had, and also we have good, honest conversations with them. Are they feeling good? They always say they want to play, but sometimes you've got to dig a bit deeper and say, listen, here's what we're thinking. What if you took this week off and did this? And I like to think from that point of view, we get a good balanced picture. But yeah, look, ultimately, if they're all fit and they're all fresh and they're all good to go, which let's hope that is the case, then we've got some tough meetings to be had, and we've got to make some plans. But I think it's great for that. I think that back three area is a real good competitive group. I sort of, I enjoy watching them out there train, because they are real athletes, and I think they enjoy pushing each other on, and I think they enjoy the battle of, we've got some really good players there, and who's going to get picked. And like I say, it's a problem I'll look forward to, that when they're all here and ready to go.
Fantastic. Over the years, lots of people have suggested Gloucester could benefit from using a sports psychologist. Is that something that you and Alex Brown have thought about?
Yeah, absolutely. And we did something we have talked a lot about, and we've done a vetting process. And actually, we've got a company starting this week with us, where they will be, it's sports psychology. It's very focused on the performance side of the game. And they actually start on Friday with us. So they're going to work across the board, obviously with the players, but also with the coaches and the staff, to educate us as best we can, to make sure that, we're always trying to challenge the guys in different ways and implement different strategies. And, different coaches, we have different chats with them. As I say, I'm pretty direct with my feedback to the players, and other guys are a bit more sympathetic, maybe might be the word. But, we all come at things from different angles, but we want to, we need to make sure we're delivering the best program we can deliver. So it's, as I say, it starts on Friday, and it's across the board. It's not just going to be a psychologist talking to players and then going home. We're making sure we get the maximum out of this program.
Okay, and then just to round things off, a few questions about you. You always come across as very calm and very measured in press conferences. Is there more to it than that? Does anyone ever get the hairdryer treatment from George Skivington?
Yeah, I think that I like to think I'm pretty composed. I think it's important, especially as a head coach, that you can process what's going on and come up with solutions. So, look, I won't lie. I have screamed and shouted a few times in the changing room or on a Monday. I think I like to. It only happens rarely, but I think I like to be direct. I don't think I ever give mixed messages, if that makes sense. I think the boys can generally tell now by the tone that I will take of whether I'm happy or not. But I think it's really important as a head coach, you stay composed. You can move the emotion out of what's happening, because some days you just have a bad half. Like Worcester, for instance, the other week, we had a bad first half. Now, you can walk in and scream and shout until the cows come home, and that might get a reaction. But if you can walk in and say, we know that wasn't good, but look, here's 3 solutions. You know, we obviously have our meetings in little groups, but as a team, here's the solutions. We know we're better. Let's get on with it. Then I think there's more value in that. You know, you screaming and shouting sometimes is the right thing to do, but it's probably rarely the complete answer. So I try and, you know, I like to think I'm composed, but that's probably from, you know, screaming and shouting was probably where I started off as a coach, and I've probably just learned to, sometimes that's just to make a coach feel better, I think, and actually not concise enough for the playing group. What
made you want to get into coaching?
I always enjoyed the tactics of the game. I think, you know, I think when you're playing, you know, you get some guys who are just physical beasts, and, you know, the game sort of comes easier and you're just dominating. And I think then you get guys who just work hard and, you know, sort of try and squeeze the best out of it they can. And I suppose from my point of view, I always enjoyed trying to work out tactically, you know, how I could be better, you know, find the angles that I could take to try and push ahead of, you know, I had some pretty serious competition in people like Simon Shaw when I was coming through the ranks. So I was never going to physically dominate him. So you had to try and find ways of being better. And I always enjoyed, you know, the tactical side of the game, the line out. Obviously, when I became a line out caller, I did a lot of studying on that and probably overdid it, to be honest with you. You know, put myself in circles thinking about stuff too much. But I suppose it was more just a natural inclination to enjoying that side of it as well as the rest of it. I wasn't really ever a player who just did my work and went home. I was always a player who liked to challenge and liked to know exactly why we were doing things, and was probably a bit of a pain for some of the coaches, you know, asking about areas of the game that didn't really concern me at that stage in my career. But it's just the way I was wired, I suppose.
And of the coaches you've worked with or worked for, who's made the biggest impression on you over the years?
Yeah, it's very hard for me to say one, you know, because I think I would say the biggest, when I look back, probably the biggest thing that I was lucky with was where I spent my sort of formative years. You know, when I left school at 18, I went straight into being a professional athlete, and Warren Gatlin and Sean Edwards were the coaches, and I was surrounded by senior players like Dalalio, Shaw, you know, Kingy was one of those. You know, that team of Josh Lucy, that Wasps team was a great team, and the standards were extremely high, and, you know, the players led those standards, but the coaches, you know, Gats and Sean didn't pull their punches. They were good blokes, and we had fun, but there was no, you know, you knew if anyone didn't pull their weight, they were gone pretty quick, and it was just the way it was. And I think those early years, you know, you don't realise they're sort of installing a certain mentality in you and a certain work ethic, but they did. And then, you know, I moved on and went to some very other successful teams under different coaches, and just, I suppose I've just been picking bits up as I went along. Sometimes you realise you're picking them up, sometimes you don't. And then, you know, in my early coaching career, I ended up with, you know, sort of some of the best coaches. There was a few went through at that period, and yeah, it was just, I suppose, you know, some of it was just a bit lucky as to what club I was at and the coaches I had. But there's a long list of people I could say I've pinched little bits off here and there. But I think those early years for me set a real good understanding of what makes a good rugby team.
And how long is your working day? I mean, can you achieve a good work-life balance and be a successful coach as well?
I don't know the answer to that. I think you know, before I took the job, I'm lucky. I've got quite a few successful coaches I can speak to, and that was a big part of who I brought into the club and how we built the team. And I think that, you know, that's a lot of those guys, you know, their advice was a big reason as to why we just hit it hard and went for all areas rather than try and sort of drip feed bits and pieces in too slowly. You know, those guys gave me some great advice on that. But yeah, they've all sort of said to me about the work-life balance. You know, I'm very lucky. I've got a very sympathetic wife who completely understands the job, and she completely makes sure that everything's taken care of in the background. So I'm extremely fortunate on that front. But no, I wouldn't. The work-life balance is dramatically towards work. It's extremely demanding job. It is for everybody involved. The players actually, are the only ones who really get a bit of switch off time. Our job often goes into the evenings, phone calls in the evenings and all that sort of stuff. So I think like anything, the longer you do something, I'm sure you find your systems. But I think probably if you want to be a rugby coach and you want to be a successful one, you have to accept that, it is going to take over your life and that becomes your life. It's more of a lifestyle than a job, really.
So do you have time for any interests outside of rugby?
Not for the last 6 months, no. I think it's obviously it's been locked down, so it's there's pros and cons to that. This is obviously, as I say, this is an all-in sort of job where you're on it all the time. But I think it took me a long while as an assistant coach to find my way into having some downtime, and I think it will just be the same being a head coach. But yeah, I mean, look, I genuinely enjoy family time. For me, I think because my family do sacrifice a lot for me to do this job, I think any time I can get with them, is a real release for me, and I try and make sure that I give everything while I'm there. Again, I won't lie, your mind drifts off, or you get a phone call and you're constantly trying to solve problems. But I think that's my real downtime these days. I'm a pretty simple bloke, really. I love the game. I already love this club. I think it's an outstanding club, and I can't wait to see where we can get to. But I like a game of chess. That's probably, there's a few chessboards around the place here now that I brought with me when I came, and we've got a few of the lads playing chess rather than staring at their phones. So I'm quite proud of that. But yeah, I enjoy having a glass of wine as well and chewing the fat, and that's a nice way to relax in an evening. It's pretty simple stuff. I haven't got any exciting hobbies now.
You've never yet had the experience of being head coach on a match day with a full King's home, have you?
No.
We've always been in some sort of lockdown. You must be looking forward to that.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. I think that's I've experienced the sharp end of that, coming in and playing for other teams and coaching for other teams and that sort of thing. But no, I absolutely can't wait for that. I think it's one of those things where it's bizarre doing a warm up and playing and having no sort of noise around you. And I think the players are desperate for that to come back. Like you say, this is a new setup and we've got new coaches and I'm new, and I can't wait to hear the roar of the Shed and everyone in the stand. And we got a taste of it. I think the Ulster game at home was great because we got a real taste of, it was only a few thousand there, but the roar at the end of the game was extremely powerful. So I certainly can't wait to see that, and I certainly hope that we have lots of good times to come.
And finally, last question: have you set yourself a target for this season?
I mean, in terms of targets, we haven't sat down and said we must finish in this spot or we must do this or do that, because, as I say, we were very what's the word? We're just pretty honest and brutal in the way we decided we will set it up, and that's the same with the board, and everyone understands the process we're going to go through. I think the key bit for me and the coaches and everyone at the club is that we build the right foundations and we build a squad that is firstly competitive throughout. So we're not going, oh, he's injured, we're in trouble. We know there's guys who can play, there's guys who can step in, there's guys who's pushing each other. We understand how we want to play, and like I say, I think we've made some real good steps the last month, 5 weeks into that, in terms of how we use our energy and being efficient in those areas. But also that the standards are set so that, we don't, I'd like us to be in a place that we don't have to talk about standards, and we don't have to talk about culture, and we don't have to talk about this is what because we just do it, and the boys just drive it, and almost coaches never have to step in and say anything, because if something happens, in an ideal world, we'd never know about it, because the senior players would take care of it, or the lads coming through, they just take care of things amongst themselves. And likewise with problem solving, like I say, this week, we played most of that game with 14 men. Before we've even sat down with them, we have a an 8:30 meeting there with the game management group, and they're already discussing, yeah, we've talked about that, this is what could have happened, this is what we could, and you're sitting there going, that's great, and then we might pose a different question. But I think if all those things are in place by the end of this season, we'll see where we end up in the league. But if we're moving into, if we're in that spot in India, I think we'll be in a very, very strong position.
Right. George, thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks very much.